You get on a golf course. You know, part of golf is to create lots of elevation differential to challenge the golfer. And so you end up with an awful lot of steep slopes on a golf course. Well, they are just rife for erosion if the conditions are just wrong. The good news is that you establish turf on a golf course, and eventually you get it anchored into place with a good stand of turf, and the runoff problem isn't generally a consideration once you get the grass established. So we've got to get the grass established first, so we have to make sure we have a system that can put it on gently enough to establish the grass on those steep slopes. And new construction today in golf course, there's a mound every 50 feet out there, and some pretty severe slopes on those mounds, and lots of contour. They like lots of definition on a hole. They try to get elevation differential just to make the playing character of the hole more challenging. So we're seeing more and more steep stuff. Now, it's not so much fun for those of you that are out there trying to mow those hills. That adds to another challenge as well. But that's another class and another time. So we do have to be highly concerned with soil erosion. Or if we put the water down too fast. The ground can only absorb the water at a certain rate. And the more clay there is in the soil, the slower it will absorb the water. The sandier it is, the more rapidly the soil will absorb the water. So if we're out here in the Columbia Basin and have a field that is a high sand content, we can put water on at maybe an inch an hour and have every drop go in the ground, penetrate into the ground. But if we go out here to the east of Walla Walla, up in the foothills where we have a high silt clay combination, we might not be able to put water down faster than 1/10 to 1/1500ths of an inch an hour without having it puddle up and or run off. So there is a huge difference just in soil types within this county. In a 50-mile differential from the Columbia River up here to the foothills of the Blues, we have totally divergent soil types. You can even have totally divergent soil types within a given field. A standard center pivot covers about 125 acres. You could have 4, 5, 6 different soil types in a 125-acre field very easily. In fact, we have an awful lot of striated soil out in the basin here in the northwest, in the Columbia Basin. There are ridges of sand that are up through those fields in amongst the areas of silt. So you have extremely varying conditions within a given field, from very sandy to maybe a relatively heavy silt in the same field, under the same system. So it adds a very interesting challenge to the irrigation. On the turf side, the minute you put those steep hillsides into irrigation, you have a problem getting water to enter the soil because it still wants to run on the gradient, on the surface, whenever it possibly can. So we have to figure out ways to put the water on in relationship to how fast the ground will absorb it so that the water will go into the ground. So one of the things we do on slopes in turf is we'll cycle the water. Run it 5 minutes, have it shut off for an hour and a half, run it 5 minutes, have it shut off for an hour and a half, run it 5 minutes, and we got our set done for the night out on a golf course. If we needed 15 minutes on that zone and we ran it 3 different times, 5 minutes each, we finally got our 15 minutes on. But we left time for it to soak in. We put on a little bit and go to another circuit. Come back, put on a little bit more, go on to some other circuits. Come back, finish the cycle, and we'd have our amount of water we needed for the night applied at that time. So there's ways to do it, especially when you get a highly sophisticated system that is computerized, that is all totally valved. electrically so that it can just turn on and off as it's commanded by the computer. Then we can get very, very sophisticated. So in turf, most situations we're in that position. We can do that in turf. And we have to be aware of that. Some of you will end up designing turf irrigation systems, and you will have that kind of flexibility. And so you can take advantage of the technology to do that. Agriculture generally isn't quite that fortunate. We don't have the return on investment in agriculture that you would in a lot of the turf situations. You know, you don't make near as much money a day out in a wheat field as you do on a golf course. So it becomes a matter of economics as to just how much of a sophisticated system you can put out on a wheat field. And so you have to look at the economics and find out just exactly what is the maximum amount of dollars that we can afford for irrigation in a given year as far as the cost of producing that crop. And so that becomes part of the economic consideration, and how much water we put on, which determines how much pumping we use, which gives us our energy cost. And then we do have to always make sure that we're applying it at a rate that the crop can handle it, so we don't have erosion. So we're always striving to eliminate that problem of soil erosion in the process.